3. Harry was just putting the last few of Dudley's rather large t-shirts away in his cousin's wardrobe when he heard the car pull up in the driveway. Not wanting to get on his uncle's bad side after an already miserable day, Harry quickly ran to his bedroom and retrieved an empty plastic bottle and hurried into the bathroom opposite to fill it with water. Knowing that he only had, at most, another minute or two, Harry quickly emptied his bladder and washed his face and hands, drying them with the front of his t-shirt. Seconds after he had tiptoed into his bedroom, Harry heard the sounds of the front door being unlocked and his uncle making his way up the stairs. There was a deep growl, and he swallowed nervously, his mind racing as he tried to figure out what had aggravated his uncle in only a matter of seconds. He had definitely remembered to put the vacuum away under the stairs. Was one of the family photographs at an angle? He gulped uneasily. Another growl was heard. This time it came from what seemed like the kitchen. What on earth was going on? With dread, Harry listened to each of his uncle's heavy footsteps as he bumbled up the narrow staircase and along the hall. Walking straight past his room, his uncle headed into the spare bedroom, and silence filled the house. A few moments later, the shadow of his Uncle Vernon appeared in the doorway, and his face held a satisfied smirk. "I see you cleaned the spare bedroom, boy." "Yes, Uncle Vernon." "Well, what are you waiting for?" demanded the beefy man. "Uncle Vernon?" The tone of young Harry's voice made the question obvious. "Go and fetch your Aunt Marge's bag, boy. You don't expect her to carry it up here herself, do you?" Harry felt his heart as it beat wildly in his chest. She was already here? Now? Oh God. Realizing that he was beginning to hyperventilate, Harry tried to calm his breathing with increasing difficulty. "What's wrong, boy?" came the reply from his uncle. "Anyone would think you weren't happy to see your aunt. What has it been, Ah, yes. 2 years. 2 years since my beloved sister came to stay. 2 years since you attacked her and made her tour the neighborhood without the help of a ruddy hot air balloon. 2 years since those freaks had to use that magic on my sister." Vernon was slowly turning a deep crimson and was currently clutching the door handle in a white-knuckle grip. "Vernon? Vernon?" came the voice of the woman in question from the kitchen. "Get her suitcase up here within the next minute, boy, and I don't want to see you out of this room or hear a peep until tomorrow morning. You hear me?" Vernon was slowly loosening his iron hold on the handle. Forcing himself to sound cheerful, Vernon called down to his sister, "I'll be right there, Marjorie." With a last look at the still fearful form of his nephew, Vernon turned and waddled his way to the kitchen. After a few seconds, Harry forced himself to move and ran down the stairs and into the entry hall. Picking up the large suitcase that held Aunt Marge's possessions was easier said than done. Huffing with the effort, Harry began the journey to the spare bedroom, stopping for a breather every few steps. When the suitcase was finally deposited in the spare room, Harry rushed back to his bedroom, wanting to leave the joyous family reunion for as long as humanly possible. About 20 minutes after Harry had hidden himself back in his room, there came the unmistakable sound of locks bolting from the other side of his door. Harry let out a sigh of relief. Okay, so he couldn't get out, but that also meant that no one could get in. Feeling as safe and content as anyone in this situation could, Harry ate the other half of his sandwich and drank half of his water before laying down in the darkness. "Good night, Hedwig." The sound of his familiar's feathers rustling and a low hoot was his reply, as the teen rolled onto his side, only to dream of riding in a giant hot air balloon that constantly insulted him and was swarmed by a pack of angry purple dogs. The next day promised to be miserable from the first moment Harry opened his eyes. The light entering his window was dull, and even without his glasses, Harry could see the dark grey clouds that were sure to promise rain later in the day. Rolling out of bed and stretching languidly, Harry placed his glasses on his nose and proceeded to the window, groaning in dismay as he noticed the water spots already rolling their way down the glass. Just as he was about to turn away, there was a bright flash, followed several seconds later by a deep rumble. Walking towards Hedwig's cage, he refilled her food and then proceeded to top up her water from his bottle. "Morning, Hedwig," Harry said as he stroked her downy feathers. "How is my beautiful girl today, Hedwig puffed up proudly under the devotion displayed in her master's voice. He was her human, no one else's. Sure, he might be a bit skinny and his feathers were sparse, but he was kinder than any other soul she had had the pleasure to meet in her short existence. "Aunt Marge is here." The sadness in Harry's voice was obvious, and Hedwig replied with a disappointed hoot of her own. "You know what that means, don't you, girl?" Waiting patiently for her faithful human to answer was torture. Most people didn't communicate with their animals. They felt that they were better than them, and there was no way that such a lowly creature could understand them. Hedwig couldn't speak specifically for all other animals, although she had met a rather polite ginger Kneasel a few years ago at Hogwarts that enjoyed catching rodents almost as much as she did, but most understood the basics of human language enough to understand what was dangerous and what was safe. As a wizard familiar, Hedwig was blessed by magic to understand her master completely, and being a post owl also, she was able to deliver important communications to those that her master deemed deserving. It was only the fact that she couldn't reply and tell her kind human how much she wished he was treated better, and how much he meant to her, that hurt the tiny white owl. Her heart broke whenever her human cried, and her soul raged for every injustice her master had to suffer through. Harry felt Hedwig nip gently at his fingers, urging him to tell her his plight. "I have to send you away, girl," he said softly. I don't know how long for, but as long as Aunt Marge and her demon dog are here, you're just not safe. I would hate for anything to happen to you. You know that, right?" Another small nip and a low hoot was all the answer he needed. "How would you like to stay with Hermione for a few weeks? I know she'll treat you well. Ron would take you in too, but it's quieter at Hermione's, and I know you're not that keen on Pig and his energetic displays." Harry laughed as he recalled Hedwig's first introduction to Pigwidgeon, or Pig as Ron called him, and the ensuing chase that left Hedwig's feathers ruffled for the remainder of the day. A deep hoot was heard from Hedwig as she puffed up and turned away from him. "I'm sorry, girl, I wasn't laughing at you, just a memory. I'll write to Hermione now, okay?" Running his fingers gently down Hedwig's back soothed him as much as it did her at that moment. Harry dreaded having no one to confide in for the foreseeable future, but he would always put Hedwig's needs above his own, and he knew that he could not cater for them whilst Vernon's sister was at number 4.